Today we're going to be talking about the first section in Algebra 2, expressions and formulas. This should be a review of what we talked about in algebra and pre-algebra, but we'll look at some examples and vocabulary along the way. First, variables are letters used to represent unknown quantities. Some examples of variables might be like x or y or b, any letter that represents some unknown value. Expressions that contain those, at least one variable, are called algebraic expressions. So some examples of algebraic expressions would be like x plus 3, or 10x squared plus 5x plus 8. Algebraic expressions, as long as they have one variable, notice the second one has two different versions of x, as long as they have at least one, they're known as an algebraic expression. And we can solve those algebraic expressions and evaluate them with some amount, and we use the order of operations to do that. Now, the order of operations is 4 steps, but I like to think of it more or less as a pyramid. Okay? So we always start at the top of our pyramid, and that first part of our pyramid is our parentheses. Parentheses is always the first part of that. Then we go into our exponents. After that, then we start looking at multiplication and division. I'll abbreviate those because it's a lot more to write, but multiplication and division. And then finally the last part, the biggest part, is always the adding and subtracting. Okay? So parentheses, exponents, then multiplication, division. And notice, just like we read a book from left to right, that is how we go down our pyramid. Okay? Start at the tip, we go from left to right with all the parentheses, then we go to all the exponents left to right, then all multiplication, division left to right, and all addition, subtraction from left to right. So let's look at some examples. Okay? First one, it says evaluate m plus, in parentheses, p minus 1 squared when m is 3 and p is negative 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all my m's with 3's. And I'm going to make negative 4 wherever there was the variable p, so right here. So let's replace 3 plus, and then in parentheses, negative 4 minus 1 squared. Now I go to my pyramid, okay? First part, parentheses. I do have a parentheses right here, so I have to evaluate that first. So I'll just continue to go down with my steps. So 3 plus and negative 4 minus 1. If I look at a number line, start at negative 4 and go down 1, I go to negative 5. There's no more parentheses, so I move down in my pyramid, which is going to be exponents. I do have the exponent 2, so that means I have to square what's in my parentheses. So that's going to be 3 plus negative 5 squared. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So 3 plus 25. Now, if I continue to go down my pyramid, there is no multiplication or division. So I go to the last step, which is addition, subtraction. 3 plus 25 is 28. So I went from m plus p minus 1 squared, and I knew that m is 3 and p is negative 4, all the way down to 28. Here's 2 guided practice problems you can try on your own. Next, let's look at this example. Evaluate a plus b squared times b minus a if a is 5 and b is negative 3.2. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to first replace. So I replace 5 plus b squared is going to be negative 3.2 squared. Now you'll notice I put that in parentheses because I don't want to forget about that negative. So really that's negative 3.2 squared. And then in parentheses, I have negative 3.2 minus 5. Okay? So I go through in my pyramid, and I go to the top first. Okay? Parentheses. And I do have to evaluate this in the parentheses. So I go 5 plus negative 3.2. Notice there's nothing in there that I can do in that first parenthesis, so I just leave it alone. And then negative 3.2 minus 5 is negative 8.2. Okay? Now that I have that, I go to the next layer, which is exponents. And I have negative 3.2 squared. So I square that amount, and I get 5 plus, and I went to a calculator, and I got negative 3.2 squared is actually going to be negative 10.24. And then in the next set of parentheses remains the same, 8.2. Okay? Now I go to the next layer. Okay? Multiplication, division. So that is going to be these parentheses right here. I have to multiply them together. So I'm going to get 5 plus, and then negative 10.24 times negative 8.2. I do it on my calculator, and I get 83.968. Okay? So I add those together, my last and final step, and I get 88.968 is my final answer. Letter B. Evaluate x to the fourth minus 3wy over y to the third plus 2w, where x is 4, w is 4, x is negative 3, and y is negative 5. So again, first step is always the same. Replace with the numbers that I know. So I'd get negative 3 to the fourth minus 3 times 4, negative 5. Notice I still replace with parentheses, okay? So I know then that they are still there. And then I get negative 5 to the third plus 2 times 4. Okay, so now I've replaced all my variables with their numeral values, and now I can go through my pyramid. Now I have a lot of parentheses, but none of them need to be simplified within the parentheses. So I can actually move right down to exponents. Okay, and I go from left to right, top to bottom. So left right here is where I'm going to start. Okay, so negative 3 to the fourth power is going to be negative 3 times negative 3 is going to be positive 9 times negative 3 is negative 27 times negative 3 is positive 81. Now be careful, because on your calculator, if you don't put it negative 3 in parentheses, you're going to get a negative answer. Okay, so be careful with that. So minus 3 times 4 times negative 5. Notice I don't do anything with that. And then the next one, negative 5 to the third is going to be negative 125 minus 2 times, plus 2 times 4. Okay, so now I'm done with that. I can go on to multiplication, division. Again, I go left to right, top to bottom. So I get 81 minus 3 times 4 is 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. Minus a negative 60 all over negative 125, and then plus 2 times 4 is 8. Okay? Ooh, I see something that doesn't look very nice. Minus a negative. 2 negatives, math's the only place where 2 wrongs make a right. So 2 negatives make a positive. Okay, so 81 plus 60 is 141 all over negative 125 plus 8 is negative 117. And I can leave it just like that because there will probably be no common denominator. Okay, so there's my answer for letter B. Here's a couple guided practice problems. Feel free to try those now. Finally, the last example we're looking at is a word problem. It says the formula for volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared times h. And it can be used to approximate the volume of a tornado. Find the approximate volume of the tornado at the right. Okay, so there's a couple different numbers we need to figure out. Okay, Well, 1/3 is going to be 1/3. It's just a number. Pi itself, although it is a symbol, the Greek letter, it does represent a number, 3.14159. Then the next thing I need to look for is the radius. Now, if I look at my picture right here, I have two numbers. Radius is obviously going to be this amount right here. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in. So 75 squared. And then finally, then the height of my tornado is 225. You might have to change later on, but you'll notice that the units are both meters here, so I don't need to change those at all. Okay? So all I've done is replace my variables with their numeral amounts. So what I can do now is I go through my order of operations. Here's my pyramid. First one, parentheses. I do have some, but there's none that need to be evaluated. Exponents. Okay, I got 75 squared, so let's do that. So my volume is going to be 1/3 times, you know what, I'll replace pi with 3.14 now. Okay, 75 squared is going to be 5,625. I didn't know that off the top of my head. I'd look on a calculator. And then finally, 225 is my height. Okay? Now the next step, multiplication division. Well, the nice thing is this is all multiplication from this point forward. So all I'm going to do is just put this all into my calculator. Now 1/3, to remind you in a calculator, in parentheses, do 1 divided by 3 is the same as 1/3. Then I do 3.14. Then I do 5,625. And then I do 225. Okay? I multiply all of those together. And my answer then is going to be approximately 1,324,687.5, and that is going to be meters. And if I had meters, there's 3 meters cubed. And remember, volume is always in cube amount. So this right here is going to be the approximate volume of my tornado right there. Guided practice right here. The problem says the formula for volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height, where length represents the length, W represents the width, and H represents the height. Find the volume of a rectangular prism with the length of 4 feet, a width of 2 feet, and a height of 3.5 feet. You can try that one now.